Alex Pereira stunned Israel Adesanya in part thanks to this short little left hook, and in this video we're going to do something a little bit different and talk about some knockout anatomy. Welcome back everybody, I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and if you're new here and enjoy learning about the medical side of the sports world, then please be sure and subscribe for all future videos. It's nice to not be talking about an injury for once, and so I figure while you're watching highlights, why not learn some anatomy and talk about some biomechanics terms. We're going to talk about what's going on at his elbow and what's happening up at Pereira's shoulder with the anatomy and part of what makes this punch so effective. As his elbow swings through, I want you to pay attention to the angle of elbow flexion. So whenever the elbow bends up this way, we're going to call that flexion. Whenever the arm straightens out, we're going to call it elbow extension. As Pereira's left comes through here, you'll notice though that angle stays constant. It's not changing. He's not straightening out and extending, and he's not flexing it like you'll sometimes see when somebody throws a straight jab, right? When you throw a jab, you go from an elbow flexed position out to an elbow extended position, which is going to rely predominantly on the tricep muscle in the back of your arm, extending out that elbow. But here, Pereira maintains a constant degree of flexion. That makes this an isometric position. Isometric because the length of the muscles on both the front, the flexor side of his elbow, and the back, the extensor side of his elbow, are not changing length. Iso meaning constant, metric meaning length. The concentric activation is when the muscle shortens when you fire it, so something like a biceps curl, and an eccentric is whenever you lengthen it. So if you're laying on your back doing tricep skull crushers, whenever you bring it down closer to your face, the triceps is firing, but the muscle is stretching. When you perform an isometric movement, that means that the muscles on both sides of the joint have to be contracting to keep that joint angle constant. With our biodigital anatomy tool here, we're looking at a left shoulder girdle / upper arm. So focusing first down at the elbow. On the backside, of course, we have the triceps. Tri stands for 3, so there are, of course, 3 heads of the triceps muscle. The lateral head, which is the one that sits more on the outside, the long head, and then the medial head. With Pereira here, the one that we're really seeing most clearly is going to be the lateral head. That's outlined right here with that lateral head kind of tendon coming down. And so this is all going to be lateral head of the triceps. The long head and the medial heads are then going to be more here on the inside of the back of the arm. On the front then we have the biceps, bi meaning tubes. There's a long head and a short head of the biceps. But deep to the biceps is actually the main elbow flexor muscle called the brachialis. And as Pereira really starts this punch, that's really the primary muscle that we're seeing right here. So the peak of his biceps is going to be sort of outlined with this portion, but then what we're seeing deep to it right here in this area, that's actually his brachialis muscle. So remember, as he's kind of getting ready to do this punch, the elbow is coming through. He's having this isometric contraction. So triceps is firing on the backside, biceps, brachialis are firing on the front side to maintain this constant elbow flexion angle as he comes through with the punch. Next, we're going to talk about what's happening up at his shoulder and the science of what makes a punch effective. But first, we're going to do a quick wardrobe change and go back to my old studio for a message from this video sponsor.
This video is sponsored by Tommy John, a clothing company that wants men and women to feel comfortable being their true selves with no adjustment needed underwear and loungewear. Dressing warm doesn't have to be boring with dull sweatpants and sweatshirts, because with Tommy John, you don't have to sacrifice style for comfort. Their clothing is made of premium materials that are really enjoyable to wear around the house and outside in these colder months. For me, it's perfect in the evenings when I'm trying to get some work done on my computer or maybe catch up on the latest sports medicine literature. And for when you're active, the clothing is designed to move with you, so you don't have to worry about things bunching up or getting all stretched and caught. The holiday season is also the perfect time to share Tommy John with someone else. If you go to their website, they have a nice holiday gift guide that shows you some different options for both men and women this holiday season. My younger brother used to love sitting around in his pajamas watching Christmas movies during the holidays, and so for him, I picked up a really nice sleepwear set. Get the best in holiday comfort this season. Click the link in the description below and use code BRIANMD to get 25% off your purchase plus free shipping. It's a great deal for some great clothing, and I really think you're going to enjoy it. Thank you again to Tommy John for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to our learning.
Now let's look up at his shoulder and apply some of those same concepts. So we talked about at the elbow, the degree of bend in the elbow stays the same. So that's going to be isometric contractions of the triceps and the biceps. Up at the shoulder, what we're really looking at here is the distance between his humerus or his arm bone and his trunk. Whenever we bend the elbow out to the side, we call that abduction, AB. When you bring it back in, we call it AD or adduction. So the muscles that abduct, bringing the shoulder out, and the muscles that adduct, bringing the shoulder in, have to again both be firing to maintain that constant position, that constant humeral position in space as that punch comes through. A couple of those muscles we can see really clearly here, particularly his deltoid. So certainly up here at the top of his shoulder, we see the outline of his deltoid muscle. There's actually 3 heads of the deltoid. There's an anterior, one that's in the front, there's a middle, and then a posterior head of the deltoid. And you can actually really see that posterior head of the deltoid really clearly in this view. So it's kind of separated right here with that line where we can see those 3 individual heads of the deltoid. So deltoid muscle is going to abduct or lift your shoulder out. So if that were firing on its own, we would see Pereira's shoulder kind of come up and that abduction angle of the humerus increase as the punch comes through. But of course, it stays constant. And so now we have to look at the muscles that are adducting to maintain it in space. On the back side of his shoulder is going to be the latissimus dorsi. That's of course going to be outlined kind of all the way down the back with a really small little tendon that goes up and actually inserts more on kind of the front portion of the humerus. But when you fire that, of course, like with the lat pull down, that's going to adduct the humerus, bringing it closer back to your body. We catch a little bit of pectoralis here in the front, but of course the pec is also going to be a strong adductor muscle. When you bench press, you're bringing your humerus together, you're adducting it towards your midline, and then stabilizing all of this as he throws the punch to keep that ball of the shoulder in place inside the socket is going to be the rotator cuff, sort of acting like a sling around the ball of the shoulder to stabilize everything and maintain its position in the joint as the punch comes through. So now with our anatomy tool, let's go and look up at those shoulder muscles. So first, of course, we talked about the deltoid. And here's what I'm talking about with this posterior head of the deltoid kind of outlined right here. And then if we rotate around more of the middle head of the deltoid and the anterior head, all 3 heads of the deltoid are innervated by the same nerve, same as all 3 heads of the tricep are innervated by the same nerve, all 2 heads of the bicep are innervated by the same nerve. But you do have these distinct patterns of kind of where the muscle fibers separate out a little bit. And remember, these muscles are just ropes. So if you think of the 2 locations where the rope anchors and you pull the rope, it's going to move the arm in that position. So the deltoids are going to originate up on the top of the shoulder blade and insert down on the humerus. You tension it, you pull that muscle, what's it going to do? It's going to, of course, take the arm bone, the humerus, and abduct it out to the side. If we now hide some of these other muscles we were discussing, we can talk more about the lat. So we've also got the trapezius up here, but the latissimus, the dorsi muscle, is going to be this big muscle right here in the back. But you can see how it's got this tiny little tendon that inserts all the way up here, high up on the humerus. Same sort of thing, pull that muscle, what's it going to do? It's going to adduct or bring the humerus back in closer to the body. Energy conservation is extremely important for an effective punch to be thrown because all of that energy that Pereira is storing in that arm as he's swinging it through with those strong isometric contractions needs to be effectively stored to deliver the punch to your opponent. And actually, you'll notice this punch could have been a lot worse, right? It actually glances off of Adesanya's right bicep, and so it slows the punch down a little bit. But then once contact is made, you don't want all that energy to just be lost in the arm. So if you punch with a really sloppy kind of flaccid arm, all that energy just gets dissipated right away. But if whenever you punch, you can be rigid with that arm, now it's not moving. And so all of that momentum is going to get transferred into whatever you're punching. And so the fact that Pereira is able to maintain these really strong isometric contractions of that elbow, of the shoulder, and really the only thing that's concentrically firing is the trunk rotating, that explosion upwards as he gets that power from his legs up through the body, that's going to deliver a more effective punch than a really loose strike just thrown out there with no real solid foundation behind it to maintain where that energy is coming from. So that's it for the video. I hope this was interesting, something a little bit different. Like I said, it's nice to not always be talking about injuries and instead just use something where we can see really sharp, clear anatomy to illustrate some of these muscles and just talk about some of the biomechanics functions of things like isometric, concentric contractions, and just this idea of what muscles are going to be doing to fire to maintain joint position in space. That's it for the video. Thank you again to Tommy John for sponsoring the video. Please be sure and go check out the link down below. It's a great way to help support this channel. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below as well. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.